Hello everyone. The story of Azur Lane is very easy to follow and get into. That's a lie, no it's not. The story is spread out over the tutorial, first 3 worlds of the main campaign, Operation Siren, 30 major events, 17 plot-based minor events, counting 50 events total. This is a complete plot summary, covering all plot important events as of the 4 scales, in chronological order. I will be heavily glossing over the details and just summarising the main story beats. Otherwise this video is not going to come out remotely on time. If you want a more in-depth summary, I'm working on it. Or go watch Hawk. Or read them yourself. So without further ado, let's get started. Long before the events of the game, a meteor fell to Earth over the Northern Parliament, the Tunguska event. Alongside it came the first appearance of the Sirens, invaders from another timeline who declared a war upon humanity. Shortly after came the Wisdom Cubes, mysterious objects used by humanity to create weapons to fight back, the Ship Girls. Being driven to the brink by losing control over the seas and being forced inland, the major powers would form an alliance, the Azur Lane, and drive back the invaders for a time. Unfortunately, this peace would not last. Following the Siren War, a treaty was signed between nations to curb their massive defence spending and prevent each other from dominating the oceans. Even back then the alliance was not as monolithic as it seemed. In the Sakura Empire, a naval exercise is held. Its winner will become the new Sakura flagship. After a fierce battle, the Magi is declared the victor over her rival Kaga, and declared the new flagship. This comes with the news of the naval treaty. Any ships not complying with its tonnage restrictions will be scrapped, and no new capital ships will be built, though some will have the chance to be converted. Kaga, knowing her head is now on the chopping block, runs off shortly afterwards into a mirror sea, choosing to die on the battlefield rather than being scrapped. Magi assembles a fleet to bring her back and talk some sense into her, and afterwards a second exercise is held, ending with Kaga finally triumphing over a Magi. She entrusts Kaga to carry her mantle as flagship and aircraft carrier, something a Magi cannot do due to her failing body. Sometime after, she passes away. In the Northern Parliament, Kronstadt leads an expedition to research an underwater fragment of the meteor. When moved, its properties disappear, so a special submarine is used to research the fragment. Kronstadt connects with the meteor to begin her research and finds herself on a tropical island with her team. There they meet a girl named Bonhomme Richard. After conversing a while they move on, getting contacted by the Federation for trespassing in an exercise area, and suddenly the sea turns turbulent, with the appearance of a black tornado. Kron blacks out. She reawakens in the sub, but none of her teammates remember, and so she connects again. The events in the connection repeat, with the exception of Bon, who notices it strange that the Federation and Revolutionary Front are conducting exercises in the same area, before suggesting they go check that area out to see what power looks like. When they get there, they see mass-produced ships firing on a black tornado. Kron endures long enough to see who is responsible. Back in the real world, Kronstadt takes some time to clear her head with her team before synchronizing a third time. This time she tells her allies about her previous attempts and explores another direction to avoid Bonhomme Richard. Despite this, they meet again, and once again the black tornado stirs. They fire on her, and Kron stays conscious, feeling herself growing stronger. Uncontrollably firing and losing herself, even firing on her friends before waking up alone on the submarine. The rest of the fleet awaken with their memories of the dream, but Kronstadt is still connected. They dive deeper to avoid siren subs and amplify the signal, reconnecting to save their friend. Kronstadt continues to fight Bon, but her sense of self is being overwritten by her destructive urges. She verges on becoming meta, finds herself somewhere unknown. She sees a pair of researchers and someone else discussing safety features for Wisdom Cubes after what happened to Bonhomme Richard. A message is left for her as a final part of the safety net, and remembering her friends and her mission, the origination process reverts, reuniting her with her friends as they prepare to finish the fight. In the Irish Orthodoxy, Le Terrible informs Joffrey and La Galissoniere of artifacts going missing. Suspecting that the Ironblood might be involved, La Galissoniere goes to investigate, but the others have other things to do. Later, Joffrey overhears Richelieu talking to her sister about being suspicious of Bismarck, before a party held for a Royal Navy delegation. The next day following the party, she is ordered to attend a tribunal meeting. The war has begun. Ajax pinpoints Graf Spee's location after she sinks a Royal Navy freighter and moves to engage her. Exeter is damaged and sent home, and Ajax manages to bluff Spee into scuttling herself. A fleet of 10 Ironblood destroyers is sent to seize Narvik. They are attacked by Hardy and Hunter, who are damaged by Z2 and retreat. The destroyers brace for the Royal Navy's counterattack. Eskimo rushes ahead to face the destroyers but is forced to stall until Warspite and reinforcements arrive. Glorious is escorting a transport fleet. They are attacked by Hipper and make a retreat. Gneisenau gives chase, and Glorious fights to escape. Her escorts return just in time as Gneisenau returns with her sister, who hunts down the convoy. Glorious is sunk. Foch and Aldery launch a night raid out of Sardinia port to cut their supply lines. They encounter and fight through a few patrol fleets before being caught by Littorio. They use their mass-produced ships as a distraction to get away. A Royal Navy fleet sails to Mers el Kabir to give a message to the Iris fleet. Hood gives them an ultimatum: join the Royal Navy against the Ironblood, disarm and be offered safe harbour, be escorted to the Eagle Union, or sink. The Iris fleet naturally fights back against the Royals and are heavily damaged. Richelieu, broadcasting from the Royal Islands, declares the formation of the Iris Libre to fight against Ironblood occupation, and urges her countrywomen to join her. The Iris Orthodoxy is split into the Iris Libre and Vicia Dominion. In Sardinia, the fleet are busy clearing out sirens that the Ironblood has allowed into the Mediterranean, as a show of strength. This catches the eye of the Royal Navy, who discuss this unnecessary show of force. They opt to negotiate a joint operation to clear the sirens out of the Mediterranean, while preparing for a potential attack. The proposal is made despite the Sardinians' mistrust of the Royal Navy, and they begin scouring the Mediterranean. Littorio schemes to move her fleet to Taranto and pincer the Royal Navy at Malta, to control the Mediterranean. Sardinia fleet ambush the Royals, who were prepared for this and commence an attack on Taranto under the cover of night. Littorio goes out to hunt down Illustrious, but is forced to retreat when Warspite arrives to reinforce. The Royal Navy's naval power in the Mediterranean increases, and Formidable ends up fighting Carabinieri after a lumbering incident, and Warspite faces Zara and Pola. They disengage, and the Royals give chase to the Jewel of Calabria. The Sardinians make a final stand against Warspite, Formidable, Valiant, and Barham, but are defeated. U-556 and U-110 are out on a mission to sink Royal Navy transports. U-110 gets baited by the escort destroyers and interrogated while 556 is away. 556 comes to rescue her and they escape, but the Royals get their hands on 110's Enigma machine and codebooks. Blucher and Z-16 are enlisted to help run an experiment. They are to lead pawns to fight enemy flagships and capture territory. Once they have captured enough, they will assault the enemy base. A successful takeover will end the experiment. They lead their pawns to an early victory, capturing a faint glimpse of their enemy, Brunhild. As the experiment continues, Brunhild turns the tables and comes out victorious. The three spar to pass the time until they are interrupted and retrieved by Eugen and Friedrich. Suffolk and Norfolk are scouting for Ironblood battleships in the Denmark Strait. They encounter a destroyer squadron and fight them off, earning the attention of Prince Eugen. Hood and Prince of Wales arrive to reinforce the two, and they begin fighting. Wales orders to focus fire on the ship further back, their target, Bismarck. Bismarck uses a siren superweapon to severely damage Hood, who begins to sink, as Eugen and Bismarck take their leave. Before leaving for the Denmark Strait, Bismarck comes into possession of a Black Wisdom Cube, given by Observer, who informs her of Ironblood's future and their defeat. She attempts to convince her that the Royals are her enemies, not the Sirens, in an attempt to get her to use it. U-556 receives Bismarck's blessing and swears a pledge to protect her. After Hood's sinking, Bismarck and Eugen are chased by Suffolk and Norfolk. They drive them off, and Eugen is ordered to continue her mission, while Bismarck returns home for repairs. On the way, she is spotted by Victorious and intercepted by Renown and Ark Royal, who slow her down. The rest of the Royals' fleet catch up, seeking revenge, and George attempts to resolve things peacefully, but Bismarck refuses. The Royals open fire on her, and Bismarck is getting overwhelmed until Tester interrupts. She fights the Royals and forces Bismarck to use the Black Cube's power. She resists and it explodes out, leaving her heavily damaged. The Royals, seeing her resolve, give her a warrior send-off. As Bismarck sinks, she is met by Observer, who is impressed by her resolve to save Ironblood's future, and wishes to see what she has in store. U-556 comes rushing to save Bismarck as she falls unconscious. In the Far East, Repulse and Prince of Wales sail to stop a Sakura advance on their territory. They are met by Sakura aircraft, and with no air cover of their own and inadequate AA, they succumb to the attacks. Back in Europa, Dunkirk and an escort of Tartu and Varquelin attempt to sail back to Toulon after her emergency repairs. They've been waiting months for the time they can make this journey. On the way, they run into Athrusia and Nelson, but are able to get past and return home. On the other side of the world, the commander is carrying out a naval exercise with Long Island against Hornet. Shortly after, they receive an emergency transmission. The Sakura Empire has attacked Pearl Harbor. They rush back and help secure the perimeter, but the damage is already done. His fleet is ordered to give chase, breaking through the defensive lines, causing the 1st Carrier Division to call off their airstrikes and retreat. Later, the EU Union fleet engages Sakura at Coral Sea, fighting Shoho, Alba and the 5th Carrier Division. They win the battle, but Lexington is heavily damaged. Continuing the campaign further, the commander leads a fleet centered around the Yorktown sisters at the Battle of Midway, sinking Soryu, Akagi, Kaga and eventually Hiryu, but not without casualties. Yorktown is heavily damaged and entrusts the Eagle Union's future and her pet eagle to a sister Enterprise. Akagi and Kaga reawaken in the Sakura Empire after the battle, both missing the brooches given as heirlooms by Amagi. They head to the Sanctuary. Shokaku and Suikaku navigate a storm on their way to find Sanctuary in an attempt to expose Akagi and Kaga. They've become suspicious of their actions. Suikaku wakes up beyond the storm in Sanctuary and goes to search for her sister. Fighting her way through mass-produced ships and pawns of Issei and Hyuga, she finds Yamashiro, who has been ordered to stop her. She accidentally spills the location of Shokaku, and Zuikaku goes to find her. She finds Akagi and Kaga, who make her face a pawn of her sister, that then protect her from the 1st Carrier Division's attack. They leave to record their findings, and Zui gives chase after she finds her sister alive. Zuikaku fights them and they eventually leave. The Sanctuary's eradication sequence has been activated. Chicago is supporting a landing operation alongside Bagley. They are ambushed in the night by a small Sakura force of Kako and Kinugasa. She buys time for Bagley to escape, but is forced to retreat. Kaku and Kinugasa link up with Chokai, Aoba and Furutaka. Together they advance on Quincy, Vincennes and Astoria, who attempt a final counterattack, but it's all for naught. Enterprise and Saratoga are defending a naval base. A small group of Portland, Atlanta and Minneapolis are sent to scout for enemy carriers, running into Hiei and Kirishima. They manage to break off and before long are met by Mutsu. Back at the base, the air wing of the 5th Carrier Division begins attacking. The scout fleet finds Ryujo, who was sent as a distraction and sink her. The airstrikes let up. Sarah has contacted her allies and had them hunt down and sink the Sakura transport fleets, while the scout fleet went after Ryujo. Shokaku and Suikaku find themselves lost in the Mirror Sea. They are saved by Mikasa, whom they return to port with for a banquet celebrating Mikasa's return. During the banquet, Mikasa mentors Suikaku on the strength of her convictions. The day after, the two spar and Mikasa continues mentoring her, passing her flag on to the 5th Carrier Division. Helena, North Carolina and Washington are sent to investigate a mysterious signal at a siren test site. Investigating the ruins, they find a new type of siren and defeat it. A being resembling Enterprise, known as Code G, converses with Observer. She continues playing the siren's game until she can find someone they are looking for. Long ago, she reflects on the siren's evolutionary process, likening it to natural selection, ordering Zero to reactivate the Inquisitor plan. The Eagle Union girls find themselves surrounded by sirens until they are saved by Code G. She asks the name of their commander but is not given an answer, resolving to find out herself. North Carolina identifies her as Enterprise. An Eagle Union, plus Renown, task force assembled to fight the Vishya at Casablanca. They warm up by clearing some sirens along the way before engaging Vishya. The fleet prioritises supporting the landing fleet by suppressing shore defences except for Massachusetts, who notices the arrival of a battleship and goes to suppress the enemy, challenging Jean Bart. Jean recalls her final conversation with Richelieu, reflecting on their strained relationship and her incomplete state. Jean refuses to surrender and join the Azur Lane fleet, and so orders her fleet to sink themselves. In the Mozambique Strait, Richelieu leads a fleet comprised of Irish Libre and Royal Navy ships to retake an Irish Orthodoxy basilica. Battling through a siren fleet, they make their way to the basilica through the mass-produced ships, and are met by Algeria and her fleet. Neither side of the Irish wants to fight each other, but neither trust each other's allies, and so the fighting continues. They push forth past Vauquelin, who was sent to distract the vanguard until the appearance of the skybound wall halts them. The Galicium Air attempts a surprise attack on the carriers but fails and is called back. Both sides pool their forces, and after a final attempt at winning over the Vishya to their side, they fight, and the Vishya are defeated. Illustris gives an apology on behalf of the royals for their mistreatment of the Irish ships. Algeria, on the other hand, taps into the power of a black cube given to them by the Ironblood. Jeanne d'Arc engages Algeria in combat, while the others destroy the basilica, snapping her out of the cube's influence. Gascogne arrives to cover the Vishya's retreat, and also deliver a message to Richelieu that Jean Bart is still alive. The vanguard attempts to chase, Sakura subs deter them. The fleet comprising Mikasa, the 5th Carrier Division, and Ayanami travel to the sacred Sakura to free Nagato, who has been manipulated into starting a war and trapped herself within Sakura. Her guardian Kawakaze attempts to stop them but is beaten by Suikaku. The Sirens invade the area and are defeated, the resulting damage freeing Nagato. Mikasa picks a fight with Nagato and her sister to galvanize them into action. After the fight, Nagato agrees to join the new reborn combined fleet, hoping she can find a diversion point within the timeline. Purifier butts in about not having to explain anything thanks to Nagato and is sent packing. A Royal Navy fleet escorting a convoy headed to the Northern Parliament is attacked, first by Sirens and then by Scharnhorst. They stall long enough for Duke of York to arrive and defeat her. Victoria's rendezvous with Duke of York, intent on launching an attack on Tirpitz. However, the arrival of Purifier and a Singularity delays these plans slightly. They commence the attack on Tirpitz and Victoria decides to spare her following their conversation. The Royal Fleet are drawn to the Singularity by enemy fighters, intervening between Koji and Purifier, who was confronting the former over the Singularity. Koji leaves the Royals to deal with Purifier. An Eagle Union fleet is staking out a Sakura-occupied island. A small portion of the fleet is sent to gain airspace control and they end up ambushing and sinking a small Sakura fleet. The Sakura main fleet launches an air raid. The Union girls fight off the air raid while a submarine torpedoes Taiho, causing the Sakura to retreat. The commander and his fleet arrive at Newport Harbor in New York City. As soon as he does so, the Sirens launch a vicious air raid on the harbour. Thanks to the efforts of the fleet in the harbour, the Sirens are driven off. The commander's fleet tracks down Testa to finish her off. A week later, 3 separate task forces are formed to push into Bermuda to prevent the opening of a Singularity. As they go deeper, the commander starts hearing and feeling strange things. The commander and Enterprise's fleet push through, coming face to face with Code G. Enterprise is furious at seeing herself working with the Sirens on this attack, but is overwhelmed by her counterpart. Koji calls the commander the key, but is not interested in him until he has brought back someone important to her. Another ship resembling Takao arrives to reinforce G. She calls themselves Ember and Ash. They turn to leave, but the fleet attacks them. Ember retaliates and attacks the commander. Her attack is blocked by Ash, who claims she didn't want to see herself cry. Ember and Ash leave and the Singularity disperses. Ash goes on to confront Observer Zero involving innocence in her experiments. Zero begins a startup sequence for the Arbiters in response to the beacon placed by Ash. The Sakura Empire is hosting a ritual involving its Watatsumi relic within the Diadem of Light. All guests of the ritual must first prove their strength in trial by combat. Among these guests are Mikasa and the 5th Carrier Division, who are here to scope out where Akagi's allegiances lie and who will fight with them if the worst happens. Oikun and Z2 have also been invited. The festivities are cut short by a siren attack. During its attack, Nagato and Kawakaze approach the island and are saved by Zuikaku. A rehearsal of the ceremony is held, performed by Yamashiro, but she is rejected by the relic, exposing her as an observer in disguise. The roof is blown off the building and Ember attacks. The 5th Carrier Division hold her off until reinforcements arrive. While this is going on, Mikasa speaks with Akagi. While she shares her sentiment that they have grown too reliant on the gods, she does not believe Akagi's path to be the right one. Ember appears at the ritual, claiming that Watatsumi is the manifestation of calamity and destroys it in the blink of an eye, but it's a fake. The real Watatsumi is given to the Iron Blood a few days after the ritual. Shinano has awakened. She is to be escorted to the Sakura mainland. Along the way they sail into a mirror sea, getting attacked by Tester and a large fleet. She is sunk by submarines and the reenactment comes to an end. Shinano reawakens to the Watatsumi ceremony again, being attacked by sirens. Rushing outside, she witnesses her defeated comrades and Akagi with a black cube. Shinano awakens again, finding herself within a multinational joint operation. Sailing forth, they are met by a monster, a calamitous leviathan that transcends the oceans and brings ruin to the world. They are powerless to stop it, and once again she awakens. This time to her ultimate fate as a warship, incomplete and sank by a submarine. The world turns white and she finds herself in a 5th dream. She is in an unknown port, with shipgirls from all nations living together peacefully under a reunited Azur Lane. There is Amagi, who sees through her and gives her advice. She could turn this dream into a reality should she desire. After bidding farewell, Shinano returns to the real world. Shinano takes charge for her escort fleet, leading them into the Mirror Sea. Thanks to her dreams, she is able to overcome the reenactment and lead her fleet to safety. On the other side of the world, Baltimore, Memphis and Helena are sent to defend a stronghold at the Panama Canal. They are caught in a mirror sea filled with strange mist and displaced to Bermuda. A rescue fleet is formed and sent after them. While searching, Enterprise is displaced by the sea fog and shown memories of her counterpart. The rescue fleet is split by the sea fog, but are able to reunite after fighting their way through the sirens, and the one responsible for all this, a new siren compiler. With the aid from Ash, Baltimore's fleet and Enterprise regroup with the rescue fleet. In the north, the commander leads an Eagle Union fleet to the Northern Parliament to attack a siren stronghold. They link up with Aurora and Palmiat and begin their assault. They break through the sirens defending the fortress, but are continually slowed by their overwhelming numbers. The commander and Northern Parliament girls get split from the rest of the fleet by the appearance of an iceberg. The tides swing with the arrival of reinforcements from the Northern Parliament. Together, both fleets advance on the stronghold and are met by its master, Omitter. Having reunited, they defeat Omitter and collapse the stronghold. The commander is asked to stay in the Northern Parliament for a while. A Royal Navy fleet are escorting Eagle Union supplies to the Northern Parliament. On the way there, they are attacked by Ironblood raiders and mass-produced ships, spoofing their radars to appear as Ironblood's main fleet. After the subs, they also encounter Siren stragglers from the north led by Omitter. Hal and Valiant overwhelm her, destroying her beam weapon and causing her to explode. Meanwhile, the Ironblood's main fleet launches an attack on Scapa Flow. Before departing the Northern Parliament, the commander is led to the Arcana Sanctum, an underwater mirror sea. Clearing the sirens, the Northern Parliament lead him to a gate, where he inserts a wisdom cube allowing them to pass through, to uncharted territory and a city. The commander passes out for a second, witnessing a vision of the attack on NY Harbour, and someone telling him to escape to Samos Island. Heading deeper into the city, they enter a facility, finding a screen displaying a long past and lost battle. They also find documents on blueprint ships and discuss the nature of wisdom cubes and the ship girls. Going deeper still, they find an auditorium. The commander is besieged by another vision, This time he finds himself in this auditorium giving a talk on wisdom cubes as a leading expert, and a potential solution to metamorphosis. Returning to reality, he finds that whatever he did triggered the place's defense mechanisms. Unknown enemies are swarming outside. They go to evacuate, but the commander is trapped in a third vision. He sees the Northern Girls facing an imperceivable enemy outside on the monitors. He is met by a hologram claiming to be the facility's administrative program. He queries it on a number of things, such as the sirens and what he is seeing on the screen, but he gets no answers. When asking about a way to escape, he is informed there isn't one, but it instead asks him to please fight until the last light has faded. Returning to the fleet, the commander deduces that this is a reenactment, and noticing the lights dimming, theorises they must fight until they go out. He reawakens on the other side of the gate, with materials from the facility, but hazy memories of his time there. As they return to the service, they meet an Eagle Union fleet who have come to collect the commander. Arbiter, the Empress, notices that while he was down there he momentarily disappeared from existence 3 separate times. In Europa, the Ironblood has finished construction on a floating fortress, and are conducting anti-air drills inside. The facility begins malfunctioning, causing the mass-produced ships to begin firing live rounds. Communications are also down, and as such, a nearby Sakura fleet, as well as Eugen, Z2 and Carabinieri, who is invited for a tour in place of the Sardinian flagships, are mistaken as enemies. They rectify the situation and fight back. Eugen has U-37 destroy the base's Mirror C generator, drawing out the culprit, Compiler. They hunt her down, but are unable to stop her from transferring her sample to Purifier and self-destructing. In the North Atlantic, an Eagle Union Royal Navy joint operation is commenced to clear the North Atlantic of sirens. While conducting their sweep, a fleet led by the commander, and assisted by an AI known as TB, come across fresh wrecks not caused by their operation, and there they find Hiryu Meta. Enterprise questions her based on the memories she's received but is blown off, telling her to ask the sirens herself. She warns them to steer clear of the Arbiters. While investigating strange weather and geographical phenomenon, they find Tirpitz in their AO. They attempt to talk to her, but suddenly she disappears. Queen Elizabeth has managed to negotiate a ceasefire for the sake of Operation Siren. Hood gives a rallying speech to the Royals as they begin their sweep. Investigating a distress signal, the Royal Navy Girls, aided by some Ibis Libre forces, come across an Eagle Union research fleet who were displaced by a Mirror C, and caught sight of Ark Royal. Near the centre of the North Atlantic Ocean, a Royal Navy fleet experiences strange gravity encountering an unknown siren. They can't scratch the thing, and it suddenly disappears. The second Union fleet led by Essex sweeps the northwest sector, investigating a signal belonging to Ark Royal while they're there. They get contacted by an Arbiter, Temperance, and fight one of its enforcers. Temperance receives word of Ash's whereabouts and leaves. An Akagi-led fleet docks in Sardinia before heading to Dakar to pick up a gift from the Ironblood. They begin their sweep, but are enveloped by a strange sea fog. Akagi finds herself back at Midway and tries to exact revenge on the Yorktown sisters before the 5th Carrier Division's voice snaps her out. Kaga has hallucinated Amagi berating her for her sister's loss and fires on her. Kaga shoots back until she is interrupted by Zuikaku, asking why she shot her. They regroup, saving Jinsu in the process, and fight off the sirens causing the hallucinations. After the forward bases are established, the commander grows frustrated with Command's hesitance to start the next stage of the operation. Leading a fleet into the centre sector to gather intel, they receive coordinates for Hiryu Meta and arrive at her location. Despite the commander's best efforts, a fight breaks out, drawing them closer to the core. She leaves, calling the intel they gathered on the way a parting gift, and this intel convinces HQ to commence an offensive on the centre stronghold. The Union Royal Fleet blast their way through the stronghold and find a singularity at its centre. It sucks them in, and after a brief recovery period, they sail through a mass graveyard of siren wrecks until they encounter Hiryu and Ark Royal Meta, locked in combat with a trio of Arbiters. They join the fight, aided by a lone Ironblood submarine, and while the commander considers retreating due to the Arbiter's strength, he stays and fights. Hiryu prepares a final attack and the Arbiters retreat. The resulting damage would have killed the test subject, and minimising damage to them takes higher priority than killing the Ashes. Before they part ways, Hiryu gives the commander her contact code. Following Operation Siren, a Sardinian fleet sails to the Aegean Sea, in search of a missing transport fleet carrying artefacts that have been stolen by the Sirens. Mopping up the stragglers, they enter a mirror sea, housing an enormous labyrinth. They wait for Veneto's fleet to arrive and begin exploring the labyrinth. They realise that fighting the Sirens within causes the labyrinth to shift, so they cease combat until they reach its centre. For the transport, its escorts and Tester greet them. Despite Tester's heavy electronic warfare interference from the weapons she was testing, they manage to fight her off. While this is happening, the Sirens attack Rome. Friedrich arrives to come to their rescue. Following a reenactment, the commander has been mobilised to a base near Midway. Their communications suffer a failure and they receive a broken up transmission about a Sakura attack. The commander and a few girls head out to support, New Jersey's small fleet doing the same before losing contact with the commander. The commander and his fleet wake up trapped on the bridge of a Sakura ship. They're stuck in a mirror sea, with pawns carrying out reenactments of Midway. They are contacted by Shinano through her dreams, and Helena Meta helps her escape. She then helps New Jersey's fleet by revealing the surrounding enemies and breaking them into the Mirror Sea. The sea's core is guarded by Soryu Meta, who has almost lost herself to destructive urges. The curse of the Wisdom Cube, she calls it, to become Meta. The two fleets join together and fight her, and with Helena's support, they are able to leave. Shinano has been selected as an envoy to the Ironblood. On her way, her escort finds a building resembling the Dragon Palace of Legends on uncharted islands. Part of her escort go to explore the palace. While this is happening, the palace sinks to the sea floor. A voice tells them to overcome the palace's trials to receive a treasure located at its heart. They split up to pass the trials, Chikuma's fleet running into Prince Eugen and Odin along the way. With their assistance, Chikuma and Shimakaze's fleet pass the trials and enter the palace's heart, where they awaken the blueprint ship Hakuryu. She challenges the now reconvened fleets to a duel, with Shimakaze disengaging to activate support mechanisms to help her fleet. They convince Haku to come with them, using the promise of strong opponents to fight. The Ironblood have built the Tower of Midgard, a singularity generator. Ulrich von Hutten leads a fleet that enter the singularity to research its interior. Once inside, they follow a distant trail of siren wrecks, encountering an active fleet. With assistance from a pair of Dragon Emperor missile destroyers, they fight and sink them. They carry on, and the destroyers go their separate way. The wrecks lead them to Gneisenau Meta, who Ulrich is able to coerce to their side with a letter from Bismarck. She warns them that the wrecks were not her doing, and that eventually leads them to Scharnhorst Meta, who tries to recruit Gneisenau into their group, the Ashes, but Gneisenau rejects her offer, choosing to stay with her new allies. They are attacked by a wave of sirens led by enforcers, and they join up to drive them off. Ulrich gets Scharnhorst to divulge the Ashes' goal is Observer Zero. She is then called by Enterprise Meta, who warns that an Arbiter knows they are there. She is also surprised that the Ironblood can make their own singularity. Ulrich convinces Scharnhorst to lure the Arbiter to them so they can gather data, and after she doesn't return for a while, they go looking for her, only to find her heavily wounded. They fight their way back to the gate home, and Ulrich's fleet and some reinforcements stall the Arbiter long enough for everyone to leave. The Sirens see the Ironblood singularity as a violation, but destruction of this timeline branch is forbidden, and so they do nothing. Aurora and Parmiat are sent to investigate an abandoned Siren facility in Ironblood waters. When they get there, they come across an icebreaker that had gone missing with Kronstadt's Polar Expedition fleet. Sovietsky Soyuz holds a meeting with representatives from the Eagle Union, Royal Navy, Iris Libre and Dragon Emperor about a joint operation to strike back at Ironblood for attacking their supplies. The Iris, Royals and Emperor ships will not be joining. Acting on intel she receives from Friedrich, as compensation, Soyuz sends a fleet led by Belarusia to rescue Kronstadt, and after they clear some Siren submarines from the area, that's what they do. The joint Eagle Union Northern Parliament fleet assemble to fight the Ironblood, who have occupied Scapa Flow. Akagi, Kaga and Zuikaku arrive at Scapa to meet with Friedrich and eventually Queen Elizabeth. A singularity is opened and all except Kaga step through. On the other side, Friedrich revives members of the High Sea Fleet, who recount what happened at Scapa Flow. The fleet had trespassed on Scapa Flow looking for siren technology to reverse engineer, and when the on-site royals came to inspect them, they were attacked by sirens. Eventually they got overwhelmed and tried to escape the mirror sea that had formed, but the Ironblood fleet was slaughtered by a beam of light from the sky. The newly born fleet spent some time to grow accustomed to their new bodies and rigging, before returning through the singularity. Despite their advanced technology, the joint fleet pushes back the Ironblood until a mass appearance of sirens and mirror seas. Friedrich calls the commander and exposits to him about the world the sirens have created. At this time, Bismarck also calls, formally announcing her return as leader of the Ironblood, denouncing the sirens. The fleets converge on Compiler, and the main gateway at Scapa Flow is used to tear into Compiler's mainframe facility. But the combined fleet move in to assault her mainframe. Compiler uses the sea mist to show the ships their ultimate fate and break their will. They carry on regardless of this, and Compiler begins charging the weapon that had previously destroyed Scapa Flow. The commander passes out, causing the chain of command to collapse, but is helped regain conscious by Emden. They manage to finally destroy Compiler's mainframe, killing her for good. Meanwhile, Marco Polo begins to set a plan in motion. Following the Scapa Flow event, the Royal Navy fakes a siren attack to hide Hood's rapidly deteriorating health. The siren weapon Bismarck attacked her with is slowly killing her. Monarch overhears this and uses the gate at Scapa Flow to go look for a cure. The next day, Queen Elizabeth goes missing on an expedition through the Singularity. A fleet led by Vanguard is sent to retrieve her. Passing through Camelot, the Royal Navy gate, they encounter Repulse and Renown Meta. After spending some time together, they learn the Metas got separated from the Ashes during their last mission and have been trapped here ever since. They inform them of the situation with Hood before collecting samples and heading off. The Metas, now able to leave, will not be hard behind. Elsewhere, Monarch encounters Bonhomme Richard. She attempts to turn Monarch Meta, but is interrupted by the arrival of Queen Elizabeth, who takes Monarch and escapes. Vanguard's fleet manages to reunite with Monarch and are met by Purifier, who escorts them to Queen Elizabeth as part of a reenactment, before they are subjected to visions based on their memories. Unfortunately, Bonhomme Richard has found them, and they begin their escape. The blueprint ships brought with Elizabeth and Monarch hold the line, while the others configure the teleporter. Reinforcements arrive, along with the Metas, and they manage to escape, erasing their coordinates so Bon cannot follow. Watatsumi is also given back to the Sakura. The Sardinians decide to host the return of the World Expo as a way to reconnect, repair broken bonds, and spread their glory, following the strike back against the Sirens. At the opening ceremony, Roma gives a speech, before going to inspect a Sardinian artifact in the Expo's warehouse. There she finds one of their artifacts has been replaced with something containing technology beyond this world. She disappears shortly thereafter. A small patrol fleet notices the commotion from her disappearance and begins an investigation of their own. Eventually they are found out and enlisted to help resolve the situation. Their investigation leads them to the underground warehouse, whose secret door has been left open. An artifact has been stolen. Heading further in, they find themselves in a mirror sea. Meanwhile, Roma is experiencing visions describing the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. They are attacked in the mirror sea and escape to an island, housing its production centre. Da Vinci hijacks it to produce an armada of airships to rescue their friends who have also just wandered in and gotten attacked, before heading to the Colosseum in the centre. There they find a ghostly pawn of Roma, and they fight. Da Vinci notices the Colosseum is held up and supported by vines, and dives beneath the water, finding a machine that is holding Roma. The rest of the fleet destroy the vines, and Da Vinci saves Roma as the Colosseum collapses. Conte di Cavo finds Trento Meta hiding in Marco's office. In the Sakura Empire, Musashi has set up a naval exercise game between herself, Akagi, Nagato and Mikasa. Each player has chosen 5 ships to be their pieces in this exercise. Notably absent are Shinano and Zuikaku, whom Musashi has sent away from the Empire on missions to the World Expo and Iron Blood respectively, as they would likely influence the game in unexpected ways. The game takes place within a mirror sea that can be influenced by the player's convictions and thoughts to help their fleets, as well as join them themselves. Akagi plays aggressive, willing to sacrifice her own for her goals. Nagato also goes on the offensive, preferring to avoid any unnecessary conflicts and protect her own. Mikasa supports Nagato while keeping Akagi in check, while Musashi is a wildcard who can attack anyone at any moment. During the game, Mikasa and Musashi discuss Akagi. Mikasa sees Akagi ensnared by the Siren's corruptive influence, believing her to be a madwoman, but Musashi notes that the Sakura Empire enjoys its current power because of the Sirens, and believes that she, like Bismarck, is doing what is right for the Empire, and trying to free them from reenactment. Akagi wins the exercise and claims her prize, a black cube, modified to be less corruptive, but still dangerous to its user. Musashi muses that Nagato and Mikasa had been too paranoid of Akagi that they failed to see the opportunity before them to work with her and be handed victory. Over in the Eagle Union, the commander connects to Anchorage's hull using a device known as the reality lens to clear the irregular data within her hull. The lens malfunctioning allows the commander to meet a recorder AI, as well as catch a glimpse of a strange entity observing him. He reawakens in a strange futuristic city resembling New York. He is picked up by Northampton and taken to a university where he meets one of the scientists from the Visions, Dr. Anziel, creator of the Ship Girls, alongside an alive and well Yorktown. They and a few other ships go for lunch before Anziel has to leave for a meeting, leaving the commander with the girls and her credit card. The next day they engage in a naval exercise to test the new Type 2 rigging. They face a modern-day fleet led by Memphis, and are led to victory by the commander. During this, Memphis accidentally hints that she is not a part of this world. As a reward for their efforts, they are given a vacation to Samos Island, where they meet the other scientist, Dr. Aust, creator of the Siren. There they meet Zero, who looks suspiciously like TB, and guides them to the newest anti-X vessel, Devil, an Arbiter. Meeting Aust, the commander learns of the Siren's true name, Antiochus, and the different ways they use cube technology. He also asks if Type 2 can be used to cure a ship with a damaged wisdom cube or corrupted hull data. It can be used as a stopgap, but not truly cure it, which would require an enormous amount of wisdom cube resonance, something the commander happens to possess. The fleet engage in an exercise to test the Devil's support capabilities both alongside and against them, but things quickly go wrong when she starts shooting live ammunition at them. Communications aren't getting through, and they are besieged by unidentifiable enemies. Memphis starts breaking down and drops her disguise. By observing the commander, Memphis Meta's memories of ruination had influenced this world's creation, and since she can no longer control the natural calculation system they're connected to, she cannot free the commander. Helena Meta connects to the reality lens, having been contacted for help by Helena on the other side. With the fleet's help, she hacks the Devil, allowing them to escape. However, a second Arbiter tears its way in. The Tower. It begins purging the space, and Yorktown comes face to face with her Meta counterpart and learns what she must do. She and Helena fight, while Memphis escorts the commander out of the simulation. Back in the real world, the commander awakens and uses the data on the Type 2 rigging to save Yorktown and Lexington. In the Kerguelen Islands, a Royal Navy fleet is investigating a series of basilicas. Implacable, Cilia, and Hero respond to an SIOS signal by their allies Argus and Ark Royal. Blowing their way into the first basilica, they fight waves of pawns, eventually gaining reinforcements from Richelieu and Byrne, who have saved their allies. While Byrne is repairing the purification system, Argus and Oak share their gathered intel. They have found an army of pawns. They are intended to make up for the lacking naval power of the Irish Orthodoxy, and defend their coast, but they couldn't be controlled properly and were deemed a failure. The production facilities have been left running, and eventually the pawns would overrun the place and spill out into the world. The fleet group up and make their way to the rest of the basilicas, clearing their pawns and reactivating their purification systems in order to bring a sense of control. Once they finish up, they prepare to go home, but are interrupted by the appearance of a black sun. They are transported to a mirror sea below the island, where they encounter a mechanical knight. They escape to safety. These horsemen, based on the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, can be reborn so long as the pawn production is active. War is the only horseman with its pawn fleet left, and they speculate there may have been infighting between them. They agree to work together to defeat the horsemen. They find the first defeated, and split up to locate the rest. After locating the rest of the horsemen, they reconvene near Conquest, who has been captured. There they meet and free La Galicione Meta, and together they fight and defeat the horsemen of famine, the Galli weakening it by manifesting a concept of faith. They travel to an Orthodoxy church for Richelieu and Implacable to channel their respective faiths, granting them the strength to overcome the horsemen of war. Since Conquest has been detained by skybound walls, they use the wall to carve him up. Richelieu, Ulrich, and Implacable begin seeing the Black Sun in their dreams. Richelieu is ordered to sail to St. Helena to retrieve the crown of the Holy See and Marseilles, who has been ordered to relocate there with the crown and guard it. Arriving at St. Helena with her fleet, she begins to fight a siren fleet led by the Devil's Enforcers. There they meet Algerie and La Galicione, who were ordered by Vicia to do the same. They opt to cooperate, and Le Terrible locates Marseilles, fighting hazy enemies. She fights tooth and nail to protect the crown, even at the cost of her own life, throwing it to Richelieu, who instead decides to prioritise Marseilles' survival. Following an impassioned speech given by Richelieu, and a threat of being detained by Le Terrible, Algerie and La Glacière join Richelieu. Meanwhile in the Polar North, the Northern Parliament carries out a large-scale operation against the Sirens. Kuybyshev leads the first fleet to seize the fortress and stop its jamming. A second fleet is led by Rossia to perform recon on a stronghold. The third fleet is led by Tarling, whose mission is to retake a research base. The job of the fourth is to conquer Omitter's stronghold and destroy the machine causing anomalous weather. They are led by Kirov. Belarusia is responsible for taking the fifth fleet and launching an attack on the Crown Singularity, and clearing the surrounding Siren. A secret sixth fleet is led by Kursk, searching for abnormal energy readings. These readings lead them to Soryu Meta. All things are going well with the operation, until communications are shut down, and they are ordered to return to base. In the Ironblood, Ulrich's dreams of the Black Sun cause her to pass through their singularity. Gneisenau Meta and Zuikaku give chase. Bismarck sails to the floating fortress to inspect a malfunction with the tower. After finding Ulrich gone, she leads a fleet to rescue her. Passing through the gate, they pursue her and are ambushed. The residual corrosion in U-556's hull from Bismarck flares up and she vanishes. The fleet catch up with Zui and Gneisenau, finding Ulrich within the Tower of Midgard before a monitor showing an injured Friedrich. Bismarck uses her survival rigging to reduce her corrosion and wakes her from her hallucinations. The tower activates, warping them away, and a corruptive Red Sea expands inwards towards them and the tower. They locate U-556, who has gone meta. Bismarck manages to get her to recognise her and calms her down. With her in tow, they attempt to lead through the gate, only to find they're still within the Mirror Sea and the corrupted sea has further spread. They return to the tower and see an upside-down city in the sky, believing it to be an Arbiter mainframe. Bismarck connects to the tower to try and find the source of the corruption. She sees a vision of a strange aircraft and moves to attack, but is pulled back into reality by 556. They are being attacked by an Arbiter vessel and incomprehensible enemies. They end up getting overwhelmed and are forced to take the gate. They find the seas have switched and the corrupted sea is now spreading out from the tower. Using Bismarck's rigging as protection, they return to the tower, U-556 theorising the Mirror Sea is similar to an hourglass. Putting the theory to the test, they pass through again. The corruption has spread and the unidentifiable enemies pour out from the tower. They fight through them and Bismarck surmises they are projections from an entity that their minds are rejecting. She names them Shades. Once again returning to the tower, Bismarck connects with the central console. Blowing away the fog within the vision reveals a path and a light. She walks towards it, and through the monitor, meeting Vestal Meta. She reinforces her rigging and informs her that Type Y cannot cure her. If she continues to fight, her corroded cube will kill her eventually. They leave to go and retrieve Bismarck's friend, and Vestal contacts Helena to hack the tower. She informs him the devil is here, and attempting to take over Hermit's mainframe. The corruption is also something she is responsible for. They just need to defeat Hermit's vessel before the devil can take over. The fleet fights Hermit's fleet, while Bismarck goes after Hermit herself, and they are victorious. Unfortunately, they are surrounded by Devil's enforcers. However, they are saved by Arizona Meta, who uses Arbiter of the Tower to clear the area. Vestal cures 556's corruption and instructs Bismarck to destroy the gate, lest the corruption one day spread beyond this mirror sea and into the world. After returning home, Bismarck sets about doing so. In a Sardinian naval base, Andrea Doria, Gorizia and Attalio Regolo bunker down from a sandstorm. They pass the time by telling stories from their past. Gorizia of escorting artifacts for Richelieu and Implacable, Andrea of a Sakura festival meeting Mikasa, and Attilio of a mission for Marco Polo and the mirage she saw during it. Later, while the others are asleep, Andrea hears a strange transmission from a radio, and hopes that Marco does not lose herself. At the World Expo, the commander dreams of a black sun and an oncoming disaster. Meeting Shinano within the dream, who also sees it, they set about putting a stop to it. During the Expo's closing ceremony, the disaster comes to pass. A colossal machine falls from the sky and destroys the Expo. The commander rendezvous to the Vicia Pavilion with all the shipgirls at the Expo, protected by its skybound wall. They discuss what to do next, and Joffrey reports that the machines are spreading a mist across the Mediterranean. Shinano recognizes them as a threat that must not be set free to this world. Marco flies by on a throne wearing the crown of the Holy See. She claims this as the coming of her god and an era free of war. Clemenceau calls and orders the Vicia ships retreat. The machines, dubbed gazers, have spread across the Mediterranean, covering the land in a mycelium-like substance. Marco contacts her fellow Sardinians for assistance, citing the state of emergency protocol. But Roma sees through her and Aquila inquires about Veneto, who is a higher authority. The ships at the Expo clear out the enemies while avoiding the gazers to re-establish communications across the Mediterranean and call for reinforcements. Colluding with Marco, Clemenceau orders the Vicia fleet in Toulon to sail to the Expo and fight the enemies there, including other shipgirls. Jean refuses the orders to fire on her friends and is excommunicated. Her fleet sails for the Expo to clear out God's forces. Clemenceau makes her final preparations, ordering the fleet that had retreated from the Expo to subdue Trento Meta. She summons the Horsemen of Conquest and shoots down Marco's throne. Jean's fleet is being overwhelmed until Richelieu and her fleet arrive, and finally reunites with her sister. Richelieu reinstates her sister and her fleet's titles, and together a reunited Irish Orthodoxy fleet sails for the Expo. A mixed Sakura-Irish fleet investigates the area Marco's throne fell, finding an egg-like hole in space that sucks in all light. They try bombing it, and it retaliates with a shockwave, trapping them within the darkness. Dark creatures begin appearing, and they move to evacuate, being rescued by Memphis Meta. Clemenceau arrives at the Expo, having explained herself along the way. Marco had planned to create a simulated world to bring her god into being, using devices that amplify concepts known as conceptual anchors, and superimpose it over the real world. The plan is to use the microlayer transference network, left behind by Compiler after her defeat, to go to the anchors and activate their skybound walls, overwriting Marco's concept of God with true divinity. The ships set out all across the Mediterranean and surrounding areas to activate the anchors. The aid pours in from every ship from the affected area, from Soyuz's fleet in the Black Sea, the Royal Navy's detachment in the Mediterranean, various Iris and Vicia fleets, the Dragon Emperor girls who were within the Mediterranean, and Hiryu and Ark Royal Meta, who were called by the commander. One by one, the anchors all light up and the full Azur Lane fleet stands ready. Using the anchors, Clemenceau activates the Spear of Destiny, striking the false god and dealing a heavy blow. But it's not enough, and the false god rises from its cocoon. With no more tricks to play, the United Fleet attacks the false god, but their attacks aren't working. Clemenceau has one last trick up her sleeve, trying to use the Black Sun against it, but it is shattered in an instant. The false god is an entity beyond this world that must not be allowed to exist, and has taken control of an arbiter, the Hierophant. Despite their best efforts, it makes its way to the commander. He finds himself within a familiar room with the scientist and Hierophant. They discuss her specs and whether they could be a way beyond fighting with her advanced communication capabilities, potentially against Deus Ex. They ask the commander for his opinion. He gives his answer and returns to the real world. The Hierophant is gone, and he holds the crown of the Holy See in his hand. In the aftermath, Richelieu is crowned pontiff of the reunited Irish Orthodoxy. That is where the story ends as of the time of writing. There are technically 2 more events that should be on here: Divergent Chessboard and Virtual Tower. I've opted to exclude these as Divergent Chessboard is so heavily disconnected from everything else that we have no idea where it actually fits. Virtual Tower seems to be in the future after the Azur Lane has fully reunited, and is set up for something that hasn't been paid off yet. To be completely honest, we're not missing much here by excluding the 2. God, could you imagine being a historian in this world after the war is over, trying to document all this shit? And then the Italian Pope summoned a false god. As for where the story is going, Bonhomme Richard now knows where the main timeline is, and is likely on her way to try and corrupt a bunch of ships. I'm suspecting her to be the next big threat, probably arriving to the Royal Navy's gate, since we've seen them dealing with the unidentified enemies in the prelude to Full Scales. Remember, Bismarck couldn't get in contact with Queen Elizabeth at the end of Confluence after being told to destroy their own gate. We finally have something on the true threat that's been teased since Dreamwakers, Deus Ex, or the X in other versions. They also seem to know where we are. I'm thinking they may have had a hand in that something else that happened when Bonhomme went meta. We've already seen they have the ability to compromise an arbiter, and Bond does say we when mentioning finding the main timeline. Akagi also has a black cube. That can only go poorly. Definitely expecting a shift in the status quo in the near future. That EN Anniversary Song of Defiance was made for a reason, and things are definitely going to start heating up. But anyway, that's enough from me. So until next time, fair winds and following seas.